It is time. Welcome to Adventures in Onboarding. That's as high energy as it's going to get. It's toward the end of the day, and it's the third day, so I will do my best to keep up, keep up the volume and the energy. But essentially what we're talking about today, or what I'm hoping to kind of guide us through, is that idea of onboarding users to federated systems. Specifically, I work with the Jabber network and XMPP, and I'll talk about what those things mean later. To emphasize the fact that you don't need to know what those things mean. And so that's a big part of what I want to talk about is what do people actually need to know? And whether or not you read the abstract for this, the idea is that like you start using something, you get excited about that new thing, and you want to tell your friends and family about that new thing, and you've learned a ton about it, but they probably don't need to know most of the stuff that you now know about that new thing. And that was me a couple of years ago when I got back into using Jabber and getting excited about it. Trying to get my wife to use it on her phone, and realizing that while she's a good sport about it, she really doesn't care about how it works and the different components. And that's okay. She doesn't have to. And so kind of learning from that, and also helping users. So I'll talk a little bit about my background so that I have some credibility as a speaker. I am primarily a user. I have been using Linux-based operating systems for over 18 years, free open source software for longer than I realized what free open source software was. I've been using computers for over 25 years, and actually got kind of a late start in life. We were a computer-free home to begin with. But I'm primarily a user, but I'm also a helper. I love helping people. My professional background is largely in support roles. So I worked in tech support at a software company, and then a trainer at a university, and then student support at a college. And so I just love helping people. So if I learn more about something, I love to help other people use that thing or do that thing. And so that's kind of where I'm coming from. But I also, in more recent time, for the past year, have been a full-time support person with JMP, which is a phone service built on top of Jabber. So that's kind of the tie-in there. That's what brought me to using Jabber. And so as a user, I got excited and I started helping people. And then they were like, "Hey, do you want to work for us?" I was like, "Yes, this is amazing." So that's kind of the long and short of why you should listen to me at all, is just because I'm an enthusiastic user who loves to help people. And so I hope to encourage all of you to be enthusiastic users who want to help people to adopt better standards and better software practices and whatever else. So who are they? Who are the users? Who do we work with? And so some of this I'll draw from my experiences of working in support with JMP, the different types of users we interact with in the public chat and others. There is that mythical, typical user, right? We all just have this expectation of some middle ground person who knows exactly the right amount of information for us to then help them figure out the one problem they have. They only have one problem, and we're going to help them fix it. So that obviously doesn't exist. Then we have power users, and you've probably all encountered these people. You are not power users. The power user is the person who comes in and they know everything. And so you couldn't possibly help them, but they still want you to know that they're having problems. And they are shocked that anybody else can use this, because if they can't figure it out, I don't know how anybody else could. So that's not to pick on anybody, but we've encountered those people, right? There's also in our community, especially, there's the type of person I think of as kind of an amnesiac. They have been part of the community for possibly years, and you love working with them, but they'll come in and ask some of the same questions every few months. And I find that to be a great opportunity to get better at answering those questions, because, okay, well, whatever I did last time didn't stick. Maybe I fed it to them a little too explicitly. I made it too easy, and so they didn't retain that knowledge. How can I explain it to them better this time so that they'll remember it, right? And so I actually appreciate those users who they feel comfortable coming to ask those questions at all, right? And then we want to always be enthusiastic to answer over and over again. And then, of course, we have entrenched community members, some of whom are in the audience today. These are the people who are just so in the thick of how everything works that they forget that everybody else is not in the thick of how everything works. And so we have that tendency as community members who are in the public chat all day, every day, of just assuming that everybody knows what we're talking about, and sometimes forgetting that new users come in at different levels. And so this is what I want to help us to try to kind of break free of, are some of those tendencies. So how can we help? How can we help these different types of users? And so I want us to ask these questions, and I'm going to try to answer them on some level. But I also would love feedback as we go along or at the end. If there are particular things you've found to be useful, but it is kind of focused on XMPP and using that technology. So what do you want to do? What are you actually trying to do? You're not trying to use XMPP. I can guarantee you that. You're not coming to JMP support. You're not coming to a public support channel because you want to use XMPP. You are coming because you want to accomplish some task. What do you need to know? What are the terms that actually are helpful to you as a new user to know? That friend or family member that you're trying to get to join you on this new chat network, what do they actually need to know? What do you call it? I've said XMPP several times and I have not defined that, and that's intentional because do we call it that? Is that helpful? And then what more do you want? Okay, so this worked, and maybe they actually want to know more. So we'll get to that. So first, what do you want to do? We want to think it more in broad terms, like what are you actually doing with this thing? So these are some of the things that I use these technologies for. I access public chat networks. I chat with people online. But I also want to chat with my friends and my family, and I want to have that in a secure place, And then I also want to be able to connect from multiple devices. That's specific to me. Maybe you don't. Maybe you only have one device. I definitely chat with people who just have a smartphone, and that's increasingly common. They just have one device. But that's something I want to be able to do. So I want to be equipped to tell other people how to do that. They may have an iPhone and a laptop. They may have an Android device and a Windows desktop computer at home. And I want to be ready to point them to things they can use on those different devices. So those are kind of some of the things that we can do with this. And then, what do you actually need to know then? I would say not much. There's some stuff. But generally, all you really should have to do is just say, here, use this thing. Just hand it to them. How many people do you know who use WhatsApp who really took their time figuring out how WhatsApp worked before they signed up for WhatsApp? Probably, maybe like 0.01% of people have really thought about how it works. They just were given a link, they were given a QR code, and they installed an app, and they followed the sign-up flow, and they use it now. And we're trying to bring things closer and closer to that type of experience for a new user. We don't want to hide how things work. We don't want to pretend like there isn't anything more to be discovered underneath. But we also need to recognize that the average person is a misnomer. But we want to recognize that a lot of people don't need that yet. It's not that they'll never need it, but they don't need to know it yet. They just want to chat with you. You're saying to them, I want to chat with you somewhere that you don't chat with anybody currently. And you need to make that as low friction as possible because you're asking something of them that nobody else they know has asked of them. Nobody else has asked them to install an app just to talk to that one person, right? Now, of course, the end goal of all of this is that we can all chat with each other in this new place. So the end goal is that you would get your dozens of friends and family members and everybody else on here. But for the moment, you are asking this person to install something, to join something, to go through the trouble of using something just for you. And you hope that they care enough about you that they will do that. So we want to keep it super simple. So really, I would say the only thing that I think is useful to know right up front is how we connect with each other once you're signed up. So you're signing up, you have to choose a name. As with any good service, it's just a small dig at requiring phone numbers to sign up for services. Any good service, you have to choose a name. You have to choose an identifier. And so with the Jabber network, we use Jabber IDs. And something I really appreciate about Jabber IDs is that they look very familiar to those of us who have been on the internet for a long time. There's a little thing, I don't know if you've heard of it, it's only been around for over 50 years, it's called email. And it uses this identifier where you have a username at some destination. We call it a domain name. You're identifying that I am this user at this place. And so Jabber IDs are formatted in the same way as an email address. It's what you would expect if you've been using the internet for a while. And I really appreciate that about that, because that's something that, I mean, my dad took me to the library in the late 90s to sign up for my first email address. And so I know my dad knows what an email address is. I also know that he would have no idea what @Bert:"Mayhak.org would mean. Like, I know he wouldn't really be able to make sense of something like that, but he will see this and know that it's some way to reach him, because he's been using email for over 25 years now. He taught me how to use it. So I look at that and I appreciate that. But that's the Jabber ID. And so I think that's a useful term to start with as you're maybe helping somebody sign up, making sure they understand that, okay, this is how I'm going to find you. This is how I'm going to connect to you. And this is also how you're going to find me. You want to make sure that they know your Jabber ID. You're going to say, I am Gideon at the mayhaks.com. I have a couple of different Jabber IDs, so you can kind of pick and choose. But it's a good starting point. It's how we find each other. It's not your phone number. It is whatever you choose at wherever you choose. Now, the great thing is that we have lots of ways to make this second part. I don't know if the camera follows me or not. Make this second part something they don't have to decide. And we have some options there. Now, they could sign up on a public server, and if maybe it's a friend that you don't know really well, and so you could just point them to a public server and say, here, sign up for an account on here, and that's fine. And I love that that's an option. But we also have the ability to host our own server, and you can invite them to your own instead of making them find something somewhere else. So there's a lot of good opportunity there. Yeah, I think I've said enough about Jabber IDs, but I think that's one of the few fundamental things that's worth knowing. So the next question is, what do you call it? Well, XMPP is probably going to scare some people away, or you're going to have to define that, and you're going to get off in the weeds about what that means and all that sort of thing. So I like to think in terms of branding. Now, this is not marketing, and I'll be careful to say that I'm not saying these are the only options. The Dino folks are here, and I love Dino, and I think it's a great option as well. We'll talk more about that in a little bit as well. But when we're thinking about just inviting somebody to join us on this new thing, I think there's a lot of power in branding. And so one of the main brands that we work with at JMP is the Snikket brand. And really what that is it's kind of an umbrella for both a server that you can run or you can sign up on, as well as a suite of apps. And the reason that we like it as much as we do, well, one of the reasons, there are a lot of reasons, but one of the great things about it is that there's this goal of having a decent app on multiple platforms, so that if you send an invite to your Snikket instance, then whether your friend or family member opens that link on an iOS device or an Android device, it will open the App Store on that device, and they will find a Snikket app for free, and it will just walk them through that, the same as signing up for any other modern chat service. So that branding, I think, is critical to help them just not even think about what they're doing. And that may sound bad, but the idea is that we are we're not tricking. We're not tricking people into doing something, but it's that lowering the barriers, lowering the friction, so that they won't feel overwhelmed at what we're asking them to do. And so being able to just tap on a link, find an app with the same name as that link, and just sign right up is a huge help there. The reason that I also list Cheogram here is that we are working on building out that as a brand as well. We have a Cheogram Android app that is a fork of Conversations. So it's based on the excellent Conversations app. And we have some things added to that make using JMP a little more pleasant and things like that. But there is work going on between both MBOA, JMP, and Snikket to develop an SDK, a software development kit, to make it easier to make cross-platform apps. And so the long-term goal, and hopefully not too long-term, but the long-term goal is to have both Snikket and Cheogram branded apps for different use cases. Snikket being kind of the really user-friendly, get your friends and family onto it. To have apps with those names on as many platforms as possible, so that when you search for Snikket in any app store on any platform, you will find an app. And when you search for Cheogram on any app store on any platform, you will find an app. That's the long-term goal there. And to share code between those projects while also providing that SDK for others to develop useful software that can talk to that. Because at the end of the day, and I'll talk about this more in a moment, but these things are not mutually exclusive. They're not exclusionary. By signing up for your hosted Snikket server, you're not preventing them from connecting to people who use the Cheogram app. You're not keeping them from chatting with people who are on a public server. We're just reducing the friction to get on the network at all, so that they'll talk to you and then hopefully find other communities and kind of grow in that as they go along. But I think this kind of branding we have found from a support perspective to be hugely helpful, to be able to just provide someone with a link, and specifically on the Android side, so with the Cheogram Android app, we have some onboarding integrated so that it automatically will launch a Snikket instance for you if you are signing up for our service, and just kind of walk you through that. So you could sign up entirely without knowing anything about the underlying technology. Now, of course, we want everybody to become engaged community members who will care about what we're doing and will get more people onto the Jabber network. But there again, for a lot of folks, you want to start small. You want to keep it simple. And so that's kind of one of the pieces that I think is very important and we've found super helpful. Don't use all the technical terms that I have been using for the last 20 minutes, but use just a couple of brands that they're going to find in the App Store. They're going to come across this if they search for it, and you can even just provide them a link so that they don't even have to really worry about it. There's also a lot of strength in this. Now, I'm not a big fan of marketing in general in life because we are bombarded with all kinds of people trying to sell us all kinds of things. But because this is all built on free open source software that you can build yourself, that you can get from multiple sources, I feel very comfortable promoting these brands, whereas there are a lot of brands I don't feel comfortable promoting, even if I might use them myself. And so I feel very confident in encouraging you to go that route as a starting point. And we'll talk more about other clients and things in a bit as well. Yeah.
Are both those apps forks of Conversation?
On Android, they are, yes. Snikket on iOS is currently a fork of Syskin. Okay. So now on Android, it'll probably be Conversations based for a very long time because Conversations is fantastic. On iOS, I won't steal any of Steven's thunder.
Come to the next talk.
Yeah, come to the next talk and learn more. Exciting things are happening. I'm very excited about that, more than I am about my own talk. So I don't know. You want to start it? No, I'm just. So anyway, yeah. So I feel very confident about that. The branding. But yes, we'll talk about other clients, and that's the beauty of it. With a federated system, and I should probably say, don't use the word federated. If they don't already know what federated means, save it for later. They don't need to know that. But yeah, so that's kind of what you call it. I encourage you to keep it super simple, use as few terms and brand names as possible, but consistent branding can help. And that's what we've really found in the last couple of years, especially as we've grown our relationship with the Snikket folks, is that being able to provide that consistent brand lowers friction. So then let's get a little more technical, because up to this point I'm telling you what you should do with a brand new user, but then I've also thrown out a lot of terms and I want to make sure I define those for those of you who don't know those terms, so that you're then equipped to answer questions people may ask, because not everyone will care, but some will, and it's important to be ready for that. So up to this point I've said XMPP a lot. Who wants to shout out? What does XMPP stand for?
Extensible messaging and presence protocol.
Thank you. I was hoping that like 3 people would try to say it and then find a rhythm, and then you wouldn't be able to understand what they said. So it's extensible messaging and presence protocol, and it has been around for over 25 years now. It is an IETF standard, and it is a protocol, as its name implies. And so it's not a brand, and it's not a product, and it's not a program. It is a protocol upon which these other things are based, or you know, it uses underneath. And so I love people to know things. I like to know things. And so it is very hard for me to not tell people about the protocol that my my phone runs on and every, you know, but how many people do you know who are maybe lay people, you know, however you'd want to term it, that you believe would truly want to know the name of the protocol that underpins their chat app? Any hands? I mean, zero people. Yeah. I mean, and there again, I would hope that the number is higher than 0, because I mean, I'd like to think I have friends who care, right? But no, most people don't need to know. But it's nice to know that there is this standard that is internationally recognized and used across the internet, both commercially and privately, and in proprietary software in places, and in free open source software, that there is this thing that underpins more than we realize in our day-to-day lives. And upon this protocol is built something that I think actually is a useful term, and some people will disagree, perhaps, but the Jabber network. So Jabber was the original name for XMPP before it was ratified as a standard. And it continues to be a term that we use to refer to that federated chat network. So basically the idea is we have things built on this protocol, and then I would suggest that the things that talk to each other that use that protocol are on the Jabber network. That's kind of the, and you know, well, I would love to hear input from others, but that's my personal way that I frame it. That we have the Jabber network that runs on the XMPP protocol. And then within the Jabber network, we have servers and clients. And this is where, you know, a lot of people will have probably heard this term on some level, but they may not quite understand. And actually, I should have put it on the previous slide. In terms of branding and what do you call it, one thing I've really tried to do more and more of in support is instead of using the word client, using the word app. And it makes me whinge a little bit every time I do it, but I recognize that a lot of users, especially newer users, don't really know what client means. That's not as common a term as it used to be, but they know apps. They know that there's an app on their phone or there's an app on their desktop. And so we might say, you know, open the Snikket app. You wouldn't say open your Snikket client. We would say open the Snikket app. And so server client is a concept that I think is very helpful and very important, but may not be necessary to define in those terms for everybody. But essentially we have our servers, which can be one or many. You can run your own server, you can connect to a friend's server, you can use a public free server, and then you connect to that server from one or more clients, which if we go back to the branding idea, could just be Snikket across all of your devices. You could just have the Snikket app. But it could also be great apps like Dino. It could be great stuff like Conversations. It could be, I mean, there's also Gadgem on the desktop. There's Movem in the browser, which that's a great option. I love browser-based applications. Maybe not the best for security, but like I don't know, it's so convenient, especially if you're inviting somebody to something. They don't even have to install anything. Just open this web page and sign in, and you can chat with me. So we have so many options on the client side. And then the other great thing about this is that you can connect from multiple devices. So as I mentioned earlier, that's one of the use cases that's important to me. I want to be able to be chatting with somebody on my phone, put it in my pocket as I sit down at my laptop at my desk at home, and continue that conversation seamlessly. And the Jabber network allows that because we have this ecosystem of servers and clients that all talk to each other. And I don't have to worry so much about like, oh, did my message history sync from my phone to the client, because it's happening in real time as you go. It's as long as you're signed in, it's happening. And so we have that to consider. But that's where you might start thinking, okay, I invited my friend to my server. I sent them a link and they joined my Snikket instance and they're using that. So they are so-and-so at chat.themayhaks.com. But maybe they want to branch out and they want to do it themselves. I can help them understand, well, you don't have to stay on my server. You could sign up on a different one or you could run your own. And then as long as I know your Jabber ID, we can keep talking. So that's one of those things where I think people coming from centralized services are going to, the server half of this is going to be new to a lot of people because there is no server if you're just signing into that same app, and you don't have to consider that. But there again, what we're trying to do for a new user is to kind of abstract that away a little bit so they don't have to think about what server to choose, which for some of you, different federated systems, that's often a kind of a stumbling block, right? Like, well, I don't know, what server do I choose? So we're trying to eliminate that by sending an invite link, by inviting them to our own server. But if they want to get more involved, they're going to want to know, oh, I can pick other servers, or more importantly, I can chat with people on other servers. Anything after that I can chat with those people. I don't have to be on that server to chat with people on that server. I don't have to be on that server to join a multi-user chat on that server. Because of the federated nature. And so then you could use that term and you could help them understand that these things talk to each other using a standard protocol. So that's kind of how it all feeds together. I want to pause there before I go to the next piece, though, because that was a mouthful, and I feel like I kind of did a little Mobius strip in how I got to the end of these 3 points. Does anybody have anything they'd want to add to help clarify that? Or do you have any clarifying questions that maybe I can make it a little better? Or how do we feel about these 3 concepts as I've laid them out? Okay. Okay, yeah.
Why would I use Jabber if I already have all my friends dependent on Signal?
Well, so there are a couple of different ways to look at that. So for me, I guess I'll frame it first, and the reason why I didn't really get into Signal, but then when I found this, I was just drawn in. The multi-device piece was big for me. Not having it tied to a phone at all is a big piece. Not needing to have a phone number, being able to run my own server, things like that. And some of those are more, not end user things. In terms of selling friends and family, like let's say you decide you're going to switch to Jabber and you need to convince all those people that you already convinced to use Signal to move to your Jabber server. Oh boy. Yeah, we get asked this a lot, and I still don't feel confident about like a short answer of like what's the best way to, because there are a lot of technical reasons why I think that this is the better way to do things. But they're not necessarily going to care about the technical reasons. Yeah.
I think that's honestly the hardest point is when you've already expended the circle.
Right.
Doing, right.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that that you can't just do it again. But obviously, there's going to be some exhaustion every time you get people to move to yet another new cool app.
Yeah.
Although, on the other hand, people install new cool chat apps about every 5 or 10 years.
Well, yeah.
Anyway, so.
And that's where, like, if we can simplify it down to that point of just sending them an invite link and saying, hey, I moved to this, here's a link. The hope is that it would be so low friction that they wouldn't even ask why you're switching necessarily. But yeah, it is a difficult thing when you've expended that energy. And, you know, but yeah, what have you got?
I don't even know it's a possibility, but does there, or is there work going into creating a gateway to Signal from XMPP?
My understanding is that one exists. I'm not familiar with how well it works, but there is part of the Slidge project. There's like Slignal or Slignal, you know, however you'd pronounce it. I haven't personally tried it because I haven't used Signal in years, but there exists something. I don't know if you can speak to.
Something is currently going under some rework because Signal made some breaking changes to the protocol to try and exclude people who were using non-Signal apps. So there's some catch up that's ongoing, but
Yeah.
there is a bit of this of the project.
Yeah. So yeah, and that's interoperability is something that I didn't really touch on at all in preparing this, but that is I think a great benefit to XMPP as a protocol and the Jabber network. There are a number of gateways to other things. So JMP is a gateway to the phone network, but then there are gateways to IRC, to Matrix, and then some of the ones that may break from time to time to some of the other you know, proprietary networks. But basically, it opens up a lot of opportunity there too, so that you can still connect with some people who are still on those other systems. And my main IRC client these days is Chiogram Android, because there's a great gateway to connect to IRC. So yeah, so that's I'm glad you asked that too, because there is probably opportunity there, but it kind of brings us back to some of the old days of trying to get interoperability and I encourage you to watch the video of Marvin's talk that happened before this, because it was a really nice kind of summary of some efforts to bring in greater interoperability and what that might look like. But definitely a strength of XMPP as a protocol to enable some of that. But yeah, the social uphill battle, if you've already done that work to get them onto one secure private open source messenger, to get them to another is definitely a challenge. And I mean, one approach, let's say that you've heard everything I've said today and you're convinced and you're like, I got to move. One approach is to just simply say, this is where I am now. If you want to keep chatting with me, which is not great. I'm not saying that's a right solution, but it's a solution. Like, this is where I am now. You know, be forceful, but that, you know, that's impolite. But if you can do that by saying, well, here's a link, you know, here's a link to this other thing, come chat with me there. You know, the hope would be that would reduce friction. All right. So one other thing on this slide, as far as technical things or terms that you might want to know, end-to-end encryption, of course, especially if you were coming from Signal, that's going to be a key component that you're going to want to keep, and that is available on the Jabber network. Specifically, most clients currently implement OMEMO, which is the XMPP version of Signal's encryption protocol. So it's basically what we call it in short. And that's another kind of helpful piece of the Snikket apps, is that the Snikket apps default to using OMEMO. So if what you're used to is installing an app that has end-to-end encryption enabled by default, then Snikket is going to provide that experience for your other users. Whereas some other clients may have it off by default, but you can always enable it. I don't personally want end-to-end encryption for most of my conversations, so I'm happy to have it off by default. But that's the other piece of this that I like, is that it gives me those options. I want to be able to see recent conversation history when I sign in on a new device, because my threat model does not require that I not be able to do that. So for me, the ability to not have end-to-end encryption is a great benefit, but you can still have it. So it's not like, you know, it's not one or the other. So you have that flexibility, but it is available. So that's something I wanted to make sure that I mentioned. So I guess kind of thinking about what we've talked about up to this point, what other questions come to mind? Is there anything else that I can clarify as far as I guess some of the terminology I used or how it all fits together? How are we feeling about it? Or do you have any personal examples of, onboarding people to a new system that you'd want to share?
The only successful onboarding I've done is when people are like, I want a phone number that I can register online. That's not my main one. And I show them JMP and they're like, this is awesome.
Okay. Well, thank you. That's, yeah. All right, yeah.
I would say, I mean, this is actually an example of a time I did move a bunch of people to one service and then move them again. When my first child was born, everybody was like, oh, we're obviously gonna share all the pictures on Facebook and do all this thing, and I was like, no, we're definitely not gonna do that. So my wife and I agreed to use this non-free service, that was at least, not owned by anyone, it was a third party and very private. That was sort of a compromise. There were apps available for people and whatever, and we used that as the repository for pictures for a long time. And then I just kind of got lucky. That service had like a shutdown scare where they thought they were gonna just like go out of business, as such services have a tendency to do. And so everybody was like, well, now what are we gonna do? So I made a Jabber channel and started putting all the pictures in there and just sent people invites like, we're gonna use this now because the other thing's going away. They were like, well, I guess that's a good reason to move. The other thing's going away. So I kind of got lucky on that one, but I went very well. There's no greater motivation to get someone onto a new app than saying this is where the pictures of your grandkids are.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah. Oh.
Repeat that maybe, 'cause
Yeah. And so, and that kind of, and it's, I was actually thinking of that example a little when I was saying my more harsh, like, well, just tell them that's the only place you can talk to me on. But yeah, so the example that was shared was pictures of grandkids and moving people to like, well, the only way you're going to be able to see pictures of the grandkids are if you join my Jabber server and come chat with me here, to move from maybe a proprietary service or a service that's going under. And so that kind of motivation of, saying, but like, I guess finding a nice way to say like, well, this is your only option if you want to keep doing that. But the motivation of pictures of grandkids or staying in touch with family, things like that. But of course, doing it in a nice way, but yeah. So yeah, what other experiences from working with new users? Maybe not even specific to XMPP, but like what are some user stories out there?
I run my own Mastodon instance. That's actually difficult to get people to use. Because Mastodon has the problem, which server do I sign up for?
Yeah.
I'm a Matrix moderator. Anybody in this room that has interacted with Matrix, Matrix has got its own host of issues.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, so what was shared was kind of on the Mastodon side, that's kind of maybe one of the more prominent examples of really emphasizing pick a server to a new user, and which to a lot of us shouldn't, that's fine. Like, I mean, it made sense to me. I don't actually use Mastodon because I've never clicked with that form of communication, but I look at other people's feeds, it's nice, but like, it made sense to me, like, oh yeah, pick a server. Well, I'll just, I'll find one that people I like are on and I'll pick that. But to most folks, I imagine that's got to be just a very, if they even know what the word server means in a general sense, that they understand that a .com points to a server, like to just that, like to make that decision, like, well, but what if I choose the wrong one? And so doing things to try to help eliminate that.
Very
Yeah.
difficult with people that are, used to say Instagram or Twitter to explain that there is no wrong server.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just pick one.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very different. And what's frustrating to me is that it didn't used to be that way, It wasn't always this way. But yeah, helping people to understand. I like people to understand how things work so that they can make more informed decisions. And so you try to help understand a little more about what it would mean for something to choose this server, that server, the underlying technologies. But yeah, I think for a lot of folks, if we can just say, just sign up here. And we see that with Matrix, we see that just sign up on matrix.org. I created a Matrix ID at some point a long time ago that I no longer have access to, that I'm like 99.9% sure was on matrix.org, because well, of course, I'm signing up for this service and that's the main place to sign up. I'm going to sign up there. And then I later created one on Fedora's Matrix server because, that makes sense. And so, yeah, I think reducing that friction. And so that's what I love about like the Snikket offerings of like hosted Snikket instances, is that you can have your own server that's yours, but that you don't have to administer. You don't have to know how to run a server, but it can still be at your domain name, and it can be your own little piece of the pie that you get to manage. And then generate invite links that you can send to people, and then they can just sign up and they don't have to think about what server, because they're signing up to chat with you. Of course they sign up for your server. So I really appreciate that piece of it. And so that's why I really kind of push that and love that we work with them. So yeah, I guess that's my present framework for helping new users not completely freak out when you ask them to sign up for something they've never heard of before. And I think it's the best. So please use Jabber if you don't already. And if you're not sure how, then I think I did a poor job. But ask me, and I'll help you. I'll help you use Jabber. So, yeah, thank you. All right.